Welcome to the PAVE Podcast. Join us as we explore innovative biblical strategies and revolutionary tools to empower you to be a catalyst for church growth. Be inspired by church growth practitioners who are expanding God's kingdom in their communities and around the world. Now here's your host, Jonathan L. Smith.
Welcome to the PAVE Podcast. My name is Jonathan Smith, the Director of Church Health and Growth with Texas Baptist, the Baptist General Convention of Texas. The PAVE Podcast is made possible by your gifts to the cooperative program and also your gifts to the Mary Hill Davis offering. At PAVE and at the PAVE Podcast, we help pastors find new paths for church growth. Today, I am joined by my almost good friend, Josh Prince, who is the lead pastor of the First Baptist Church of Cedar Hill, Texas. Josh, thanks for joining the PAVE Podcast today.
Yeah, I know how excited you are to have me here.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I just say that because, as we've discussed in the past, now this is not a real spiritual gift, so Lord, please forgive us, but you certainly have the spiritual gift of sarcasm.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even know, it's hard to know. Is he being serious? Is he kidding? Where does that come from?
It's a defense mechanism.
Okay.
It was developed in my childhood. My sister was born sarcastic.
Okay.
It was her spiritual gift.
Okay.
She was kissed by the gods with sarcasm, and so I would get in trouble because my response to her sarcasm, of her methodical thinking of how to mess with me, was to punch. And
wow.
So
This got real deep real fast.
Well, I had a season where I would bite too, and we had a babysitter, and my parents let her bite me back to learn the lesson.
As your 15-year-old,
it wasn't
you should
that
have known
old.
better
It
than that.
stopped. So around 7th or 8th grade, I really had to develop my sarcasm to keep me from getting in trouble for punching my older sister.
Wow. So pretty much you're blaming your sister for your sarcasm.
Yes, and this is not the first time I've done it, and I've done it in her presence as well. So she understands that I throw her under the bus for this.
Well, just like a good brother, right?
Yeah.
Like a good brother.
And not just a good brother, a good little brother.
Good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
blame the older siblings for it.
Yeah, well, I'm the youngest brother. My brothers are 7 and 8 years older than I am, and so I kind of have the same perpetual little brother. I can't turn off the it's practical jokes for me.
Yeah.
I've done some terrible things to people, including you, just not too long ago. Yeah, I preached. Thanks for asking me to preach at your church, and then I pretty much, stood up and said, in my role, you're not supposed to have favorites. And I said, but you know what? Your pastor, Josh Prince, he is definitely not one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that was mostly just for the guys who might be listening. You didn't want them to get jealous.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true. And there it is. There it is. Well, hey, so grateful that you're joining us today. I want to lead with this. I want to lead with something you just told me a few minutes ago, because I think it really points to the health of a church. So tell them about a decision that your church just made this past Sunday.
Yeah, so I had a friend who reached out to me. We sponsor a couple different ministries and individuals ongoing in the church. 12% of our annual budget goes towards mission funding in different ways. And so I had a friend that I worked for in college, reached out, took on a church, and really in a lot of ways it was a church plant. Now it's a revitalization.
Okay.
They have been experiencing incredible growth.
It's in a different state.
A different state in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And just had major breakthrough this summer, was reaching kids, had 100 kids go to their camp, maxed out their camp numbers, had those families coming to church, all that great things that are taking place there. And so they're seeing salvation, seeing baptisms. But with new believers, they're not quick to give. They don't understand that as a principle. And so they have seen the growth, but they're numerically or financially, I should say, dealing with some struggles. So he asked a couple churches, including ours, would you consider giving, around $6,000? So I took it to the church, and they were, the finance committee at first was like, yeah, that's great. We have this fund. We can pull it out of there. The deacons heard about it and said, hey, can we make a motion after your motion to actually increase that? I said, sure, sounds great. So we brought the motion on Sunday for $6,000 to be given to the church.
Right.
Deacon said, I'm going to follow that up, and they approved $10,000
Yeah,
as a
isn't that
church
great?
to help out the church. So it was awesome.
So I wanted to lead with that because today we're going to talk about the revitalization of the First Baptist Church of Cedar Hill. But that is such a strong sign of a church that is healthy, that's doing well, that is as concerned about other churches as it is concerned about its own church. So FBC Cedar Hill, truth be told, in Texas Baptist life, it's one of the older, or maybe one of the oldest churches in Texas. So tell us about just about the church and about the revitalization. Let's talk through that.
So origin story,
Sure.
Real quick. It's we're about to celebrate 175 years. So November 2025, we'll celebrate our 175th
Okay.
anniversary. Really cool, like one of those little nuggets when you have such a long 10-year
Yeah,
history.
right.
The very first building that the church ever built, the sanctuary, was burned down in an Indian raid. And so they had to move into the downtown area.
How many churches can say that? Not
Exactly.
many. Right.
It's great. So they had to move into downtown. They were given land inside the city limits so that
Wow.
they could be safer.
As a result of they were given land
Yeah,
as a result
that
of
was
the
part of
okay.
it. Yeah, for the safety sake. So,
Wow.
anyways, yeah. So the church is it's known in the community, but not for really anything before I got there, and not that my getting there made it known all of a sudden, because nobody knew me either. But it was a church that had existed, and I think that was a great way to
Yeah.
speak of kind of where it was.
Didn't have a city presence.
Didn't have an identity.
Sure.
Yeah, and very kind people,
Yep.
part of the church. But when I came in, when our family moved there, we almost doubled the children's ministry. Church was kind of had been in a holding pattern for a while. The pastor was he had been there 30. I think when he retired, it was 32
Okay.
years.
Yep.
And so towards the end, nothing against him. It's just kind of as you get
Churches
closer to
get
retirement,
older,
it kind of
right?
sits
So
still.
one of the principles there that you might need to know if you're listening, Pastor, is that however old you are, you're going to reach people 10 years either side of your age. I'm an old man now. I'm 53. So if I were pastoring at 43 to 63, would be my natural audience. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so over that time, Cedar Hill just exploded in that time. Towards those last few years, it went from a really small town to now we're at 46,000 people.
Okay. South side of Dallas.
South side of Dallas. Plus, you have Grand Prairie, we have Mansfield, we have these other areas that experienced a big boom of growth as
Right.
well, just being on the outskirts of Dallas. So there was a lot of that happening. People were trying to find churches that had more of a youth and children programming than First Baptist Cedar Hill did at the time, and so they ended up we lost a lot of that middle range
Okay.
as far as our young families and our median age families.
Right.
So when we came in, we had a great group of senior adults. A majority of them are still there, which is a huge blessing
Yeah,
to
that's
me.
fantastic.
A huge blessing to the church.
Yeah, it's a big sign of your good leadership.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to say yeah like that was arrogant,
Well,
but yeah.
we did say you're sarcastic, so
Yeah,
we'll take it as
sure.
sarcasm.
Okay. So when we came into the church, my big focus, and I said it from the beginning of my interview process, I had a really clear understanding of what we needed. It wasn't a vision statement. It
Sure.
was just some things that we needed to focus on. And so community and prayer and gospel. Those are the three things. So I wanted to make sure that I was proclaiming the gospel every single Sunday, that
Right.
there was always an opportunity to respond every single Sunday. I've held to that
Yep.
now 4.5 years later. Prayer was something that the church and any church would say, yeah, that's important.
Sure. Yeah.
And really,
and we pray. We pray.
yeah, we pray. And one of the big things that they used to say is we pray at the beginning and the end of everything. I'm like, okay, that's good.
Sure.
But just to have a posture of prayer, to have a dependency on prayer, that's actually something we're going to focus on this next year. But for me, the number one thing was community. And I had a friend recently, a church member, he said, it was really a high praise for me and Jess. He said, you two are gatherers.
Okay.
And I was like, man, that really...
So it's not the spiritual gift of sarcasm. It's the spiritual gift of gathering.
Gathering and sarcasm. You had to put them together. And I think that really speaks. As I look back to my ministry career, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Even when we were doing student ministries, we did small group ministry, and now as I'm doing senior pastorate, it's definitely been that aspect of I want to gather people. I want people to feel included. I want people to feel seen, to be valued, all of that type of stuff. And so that's really where it started for us, was we wanted to be a gathering church. We wanted to be, what it had to start with before we got anybody from the outside, we had to fix some things on the inside.
Okay, so did say that again. Slow down. Say that sentence one more time.
Yeah, so before we could do anything with the outside, bringing people in, whatever it might be. We had to repair some things on the inside.
Yeah.
And the story I've told often when it comes to First Baptist Cedar Hill that showed the reality where there was a disconnect of long tenured people was my wife hosted a women's ministry gathering. We had some people come in who had been at the church for a really long time but did not know each other. One of them said, I don't know that lady's name. Her name was, well, that does not matter. But it was one of those things where it was really a nod to that reality.
Right.
So that's where we started. We really wanted our people to know each other, to be intentional. So they would say, yeah, we do fellowships and we do meals. Yeah, but there wasn't this interaction.
A lot of churches kind of get stuck on inorganic ways of having gathering and people knowing one another, and then that sounds like let's have this is kind of an older idea. Let's have supper groups.
Yeah.
Let's put people in groups of 4, and that just never works.
Yeah.
Right. But when it can be authentic, right, and organic, it's different, and that's what you've created.
Right. Well, and just because you serve fried chicken doesn't mean everybody's actually going to know each other and
Exactly.
fellowship with each other. So I can't point to a massive amount of, or a couple things that we did. I think it was just our personalities and really evoking from our associate pastor and his wife, their personalities. They are gatherers too.
Right.
And that really began the process of allowing the church to care for one another, allowing them to see one another and to know one another. When you can get to that level of knowledge and you can get to a greater sense of authenticity, you can get to a greater concern for one another. And then when people come in, they're seeing, oh, this is a church that actually does love each other. The problem that we, always have to be mindful of is that we don't care so much for just each other that we're not willing to embrace the people who are coming.
Go figure. One of the Lord's great commands, right? In fact, it comes from John. I think you got that on your phone. We were going to talk through that verse for just a second. In John chapter 13,
right?
What does it exactly say?
Yeah, so Jesus' encouragement is, I give you a new command, love one another, just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another.
A new command, but it doesn't sound new.
Right.
Right. So what makes it new? I'm setting you up here. I hope that we'll see what your answer is, if it's the same as mine or whatever.
I wouldn't say, so not that it's forgotten, but maybe it's not practiced.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not
That's why he says
focus.
New. So I think he says new because of the qualifier, right? The Old Testament is full of we should love one another, right? We should love God. But then he qualifies it with, we'll read it again.
Okay. So I give you a new command, love one another just as I have loved you.
And there it is, right? Not the way that Jonathan and Josh should love one another. That's no longer the standard. The standard is the love that Christ has for people. And that's how we're called to love one another. And that's a game changer.
Yeah. And also somewhat impossible.
For sure.
But I think if you're constantly reaching for something that you'll never be able to fully obtain, it shouldn't discourage you. That should motivate you.
Yeah, sure.
So I love to be around people. There's a mini introvertedness to me that I've developed over the years of ministry where, and it doesn't feel like I'm fake when I'm around people, but I do need a little break. Yeah. Right? I need to shut down. I need to watch football or decompress or whatever it might be. There have to be these things that I pull away from, but I really do love being around people. Yeah. And I love to care for people. I love to encourage people. I love to see people when things begin to make sense for them, when they feel a part of something, which goes back to that gathering.
It's not surprising, right? Because if you're listening today and you're looking for some encouragement in the lines of revitalization, what Josh is telling you is just an axiom that we teach and PAVE that's true. The church reflects its senior-most leader, right? And so if the senior-most leader is a gossip, guess what they're going to be? If he is one who stirs up dissension, that's what they'll do. But when the senior-most leader, and especially when you as a couple and as a family, when you lead with prayer, when you lead with love, when you lead with care, when you lead with shepherding, the people are just going to reflect. And you're the atypical, you're at the exact spot. I teach all the time. By the 5-year mark, whatever the church is like, attitudinally, it's on you. It's kind of your thumbprint. And so I know some guys who are even more gregarious than you and I, which is that's pretty hard to do. We're both pretty I don't like going to the grocery store because I walk out with 5 new friends, and then sometimes I feel like that was a little too much, but that's just my reality. But yeah, there are guys who I know who I know them, and I walk into their church and just go, why am I surprised
Yeah.
that it's this way? And that can be positive, or it can also be really negative.
Yeah. Well, one of the funny things that happened about a year ago or so, we had some interns, and they wanted to see, the full life of the church, and so they came to one of our business meetings. And after we let out, they both came up and they said, that was the most fun we've had at a business meeting ever.
Right,
And they said,
yeah.
you can tell. They said you can tell that the church loves you.
Yeah.
Which is not something that you necessarily pick up when you go to a business meeting.
Sure.
Like, oh, they really love the pastor.
Yeah.
And there wasn't necessarily, when I look back at it, there wasn't anything necessary. But the joking aspect amidst a serious thing, the ability to, joke with each other, to laugh about certain things. That's who I am, right? And that's who the church has developed in, and so it's been really special to see that.
So I want to come back in a minute to a number, something that you have done that the number is so entrenched in my mind that I can write the number down, and this would be the only situation in which only church that I'm working with that I would know this number.
Yeah.
But first, so tell us what's the church like now? Tell us about the attitude and spirit of the church, the growth of the church. What has the Lord been doing to revitalize this church?
Yeah, so the unique thing that we've experienced is as growth was happening, one, there was retention. So we didn't lose a lot of people.
Yeah.
We did lose some, but we didn't lose a lot. Retained a lot of our senior adults,
Yep.
enhanced our relationships with a lot of them as well.
Yeah, and guys, that's the way to go.
Yeah,
that is the way to go.
And my wife's heart, once again, as a fellow gatherer, we had so many people into our home.
Yeah.
That first year, and so there was a level of connection and trust that was
COVID
developed.
time too, right?
Yeah, that was kind of as we were coming out of it, but still
Yeah.
people were nervous.
Yeah.
And so that was huge for us. It really set us up for people to say, okay, they really do
I want
know me
to
and care about me.
thank you guys for inviting me and my family over to have dinner at your house.
Church
Appreciate
membership
that.
because
appreciate that.
we paid for the lunches or the dinners out of the
Okay,
tithe.
I see how
so
that is.
that was it.
'Cause
That's on
I've
you.
never bought you lunch before.
That's true.
Speaking of sarcasm,
Yeah.
but continue.
It's fine. Thank you for what are those dollars that are given to help pay for Mary Hill. So we retained, but then we began to add multi-generational,
Yeah.
which was so encouraging to me because we weren't just adding a bunch of people that were like us.
And your community is very
Extremely multi-generational. And so we were adding young families, we were adding 50-year-old couples and singles, and I mean it was just
College
all over
students.
the place.
Yeah, college
the
kids.
college students have been the most recent thing
Okay.
that we've seen added, and really it's taken off the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's been really special for us as a church. Because once again, we had to correct some things.
Sure.
We had to be a little more authentic with one another. And so what the college students are coming in, and when they're getting connected with us, that's one of the big things that they're saying is, this is a church I feel cares about me.
Right.
This is a church where I can serve, I can be involved, all of that type of stuff. And that was not who the church was when we first got there. That is who the church has become. And so it's really cool to see that because so many of our college students, they're going back and they're saying, hey, I've got this home away from home that I've been connected
So
with.
even what you're describing in the numerical growth is a result of loving one another.
Exactly.
Which is the last scripture you talked about, right? It's kind of counterintuitive. This is how the world will know that we're his disciples. You would think that Jesus would have said, if you love people outside of his kingdom, but it's so counterintuitive to us that no, it's if you love one another. If disciples love other disciples, then the world will go, okay, they'll take notice. I think because it's a different type of relationship than what happens in the world.
Yeah, so we had a couple join on Sunday, and they've been with us for a while now. And right after they came the very first Sunday, we went to coffee with I went to coffee with the husband, and he said, how do we join the church? And I was like, man, you've only been here one Sunday. And he said, but the spirit is different.
Yeah.
And one of the cool
compared
things,
to other churches.
compared to other churches,
Yeah.
and that was one of his things is, we've visited some great churches around here.
Sure.
He affirmed the way that I preach, that style, but he more so was just affirming the church and what he experienced. We had a lady on our greeter team. We have rovers on Sunday mornings who their main focus is to be in the sanctuary, walking around and greeting everybody inside the sanctuary.
That's good.
And so this lady, she was talking with them, and she ended up sitting with them.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, what was funny is, as I was preaching, I saw her over there, and her husband and her daughter are sitting on the other side of the sanctuary. She's sitting with guests, and that was huge for them.
Yeah,
because like we always put it out before our greeters. You have to imagine the sanctuary on a first-time Sunday as your first day in the high school lunchroom.
That's
right?
good.
It's super intimidating.
Yep.
You don't want to sit by yourself, but you don't want to ask anybody to come sit with you.
And we as church people don't think of it that way. We don't think of it as but even for someone who is a longstanding believer to go to a new church, they're nervous.
Yeah, they're nervous. And even this lady, like the lady that sat with them, I love what the Lord has done in her life over the last couple of years. She would not have been that person a couple years back. But because she's seen spiritual breakthrough in her life where she authentically has come to a place of faith, has been baptized, has shared her testimony publicly, now she sees the value of authenticity, of knowing one another, all that kind of stuff. So she sees a great value in that. Yeah. And so that couple has come in and, they've just felt seen. They felt loved. I was telling you the story earlier that has been such an affirmation to where we're at. We have a lady who visited with her daughter. Her daughter's lives in Cedar Hill. Mom doesn't. But she came to church with her that Sunday, and she sent us a message afterwards. And I don't want to get into the personal side of her story, but one of the things that she mentioned is, I felt so loved in such a short amount of time.
Right.
And one of the bigger things that she was applauding was my daughter. Everyone knew who she was.
Right.
She talked about how senior adults and other youth her age were all coming up and talking with her and wanting to meet her mom. It was such a encouragement, like this proof that we have really turned a page, and this has become our like an identifying factor to who we are, which all lends into. That's how they know we're authentic. That's how people can know that we really do love Jesus. We really are disciples because they've sensed and recognized that we love one another and we love them. That's a huge thing.
It is. So one of the things we talk about in PAVE is you don't have to stand on the stage and say, you know what, we're not as loving of a church as we should be, so hey, y'all, go be loving.
Yeah.
I don't know, that almost never works.
Right.
But instead, we talk about display the church you need to become. Whatever it is that you need to become, Pastor. In Josh's case, the church just needed to be thicker in relationship and more intentional in relationship and more organic in different ways. And so you guys lived it.
Yeah.
You didn't. I mean, have you pulled people along the way in to say, hey, let's live this way? Of course you have. But there's some things that you can preach all day long, but people just need to see. They need to see it demonstrated, and you've done that. So that has led you. Speaking of, you said a moment ago that kind of the church was in the community in Cedar Hill, but not really known for much. And I said, I know a certain number, 75104.
Yeah.
That is
That's our zip code.
It's your zip code.
Yeah.
And I know that because, well, I've worked alongside your church in a little bit of consulting, but still, every time I'm there, right, it's 75104. You have hats that say 75104. Something really cool just happened on the side of your building. I'll let you tell that part of the story.
So the city set up this mural grant. We're in the downtown Cedar Hill area, which is just a growing metropolis.
Yeah.
Actually, every building's like from the 1800s. But they wanted to do some great things downtown. So they give us the mural grant. We reach out. We get approved. So we had a girl come in, great artist out of Fort Worth, and she put up on the side of our building, "We love 75104."
Yep.
Big old graphic. It's been great because I've been seeing it shared on social media
it looks
by
fantastic.
people who aren't part of the church.
She did an amazing job.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big thing that started. It's actually my wife's fault. She gets all the praise for that. We were about to go on a mission trip to Denver to work with another church to help out, and she said, that's great, but don't you feel like we should really start something here first?
Yeah.
Like all the stuff we're going to go do up in Broomfield, really feel like we need to be doing that stuff here. So we created We Love 75104 week, and it was 4 days in which we did some projects around the campus. Y'all, we threw away like almost entire rooms of stuff at our church.
And that's, if you're listening, that's so typical for a church that needs revitalization. I'm thinking about a church I was working with that had 23 rooms in which a disciple could be made. That included the sanctuary in every classroom, no true storage closets, but space that used to be made to make a disciple. 23, 17 of them were just full of, what is it full of?
Yeah. Junk.
Yeah, old VBS stuff.
Everything from 10 years ago that we might need again.
Oh gosh, 10's not bad. Like 20, 30, 40. It's amazing some of the things that I like. Sometimes I'm like, I need to use Google Lens to figure out, is this worth anything? Can I take this when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
Did I say that out loud?
The storage facility is $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
Churches we've just tapped into that. That's what we're doing.
Wow.
So part of the project that week was clear up around the church itself. But then the afternoon we went house to house in local neighborhoods, and we had a block party that Thursday night. It was the We Love 75104 block party. And so we hosted it out on what we call our green space, so a lawn area. And we had tons of people from around downtown come.
Yeah.
We had food, we had stuff for the kids, connected with a family that week that we didn't hear from again for months. Jess reached out, my wife reached out to the mom a couple months later, invited her to come to a Bible study. She came, and we actually have her story on our website.
Yeah.
Her name is LaToya. Just incredible what God has done in her life and her kids. So both her sons gave their life to Jesus.
Yeah.
She got rebaptized because just kind of the out of order story that a lot of people have.
Yep.
Really, really cool. But it came from that We Love 75104, which is now led into, it's even on our vision statement now.
Yep.
And so we stole a piece of it. So our vision is that we will mobilize 104 disciples to advance God's kingdom in 75104.
Right.
I think the due date on that is 2030.
2030, yeah.
Yeah, I missed that part at the beginning.
That's
But that's it's who we are. It's an identifying marker, right? And the big drama that sometimes we have is, well, I don't live in 75104.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I tell them, then that means you're off the hook. You don't have to make disciples where you live. No, obviously we're making disciples everywhere.
That's good.
But yeah, that has become this big thing we're really going to explore this over the next several months. Is if we were to walk up to somebody that was not a member of First Baptist Church Cedar Hill,
Yeah.
and we were to ask them, hey, do you think that First Baptist Church Cedar Hill loves this city?
Right.
We want the response to that to be yes.
Yeah.
So we've got to explore some things over the next several months that we think will lend us to finding more yes answers to that over the next year or two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Well, so you're literally obeying Acts 1:8, right? Be
Yeah.
my witnesses in Jerusalem. And while you're working on, our opening story was about you blessing another church in another state, that maybe like a Judea or maybe even a Samaria.
Yeah.
But we have to, as we're reaching other places, we have to focus on our Jerusalem and what God has called us to immediately. That's where you're going to have your biggest probably impact and your longest standing impact to bring, as I like to talk and preach a lot, not to just make a difference or make an impact, but to bring history. There's someone in 75104 who 2 generations from now, there's going to be a little girl who follows Christ because of the work that's being done now, because her grandparents who, she's not even thought of yet, her parents even aren't even born yet, but bringing that generational change is most likely to happen in your shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been something special that we've seen in regards to people, and this, this lends to probably another episode down the line, but just the impact of people understanding, man, God has done something powerful in my life. I need to tell other people about this, which is setting us up for some great evangelistic efforts over the next year or so as well. But yeah, it just to unlock things with. What's crazy is where it started is not where I would have thought it started, but it started with, okay, we need to repair ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to love one another.
Right.
And when we do that, what we've seen is the long-lasting result. How far out that's going to be able to reach over time.
When you can trust God and what He said, right?
Yeah.
That if you love one another, the outside world will see and know. And no, that's not a passive statement on Jesus' part.
Yeah.
Because He also told us to go and take the gospel to all these places. But if people come into a congregation that's not loving, right, they're not going to come back.
Exactly.
Not going to come back. So, is there one, just kind of summarizing and starting to land this plane? Was there one thing from PAVE? You were in our original cohort, so we did a lot of testing on you guys. And we're thankful for all of you out there who were in that original cohort. But was there one particular thing in PAVE as an encouragement to these pastors that you learned, that you put into place, or maybe something we've already talked about that you could use a different phraseology for, that really was one of the catalysts? There were many catalysts, but was one of those catalysts to help your church revitalize? So
one of the big things, and you probably stated it in some super creative way, but for us it was celebration.
Yeah.
We, as a church, they had known nothing super exciting for a while. And so they hadn't celebrated together.
Yeah, celebrated life change and
baptism or just new members.
Yeah, living on mission.
Yeah. They hadn't gotten to celebrate that. And so we wanted to do a better job of celebrating. And I don't think that we've tapped into that fully just yet.
Sure.
But we have seen a lot of that become a greater reality, right? We shifted our business meetings to not just be business, right? We wanted to spend time celebrating what God was doing. So we spend time in prayer, and we thank God for very specific things. And then we bring people up to share, a testimony of something that they experienced of one of the ministries we had done since the last time we met. So like this last one, we had some from our mission trip come and share.
Right.
They also shared on a Sunday, but we had them share a little more in depth. And,
Sure.
And for them, the point of that night was not only what are you grateful for, what you experienced, but why would you implore somebody else to go next time, right? So it's that celebration and that continuation.
Yeah.
So let's celebrate what's happening, and then let's look forward to how you can be part of a celebration in the future.
Yeah. So Pastor, if you're listening, that in the upside down church where the structures are huge and the programs are huge and the mission, it gets kind of lost in all that. What Josh is telling you is we have to celebrate the mission.
Yeah.
Celebrate what God has done in changing someone's life. Celebrate the people who are on mission. Celebrate the people who are making disciples. Celebrate the people who are living in holiness and righteousness. Just we have to celebrate the accomplishment of the mission. The Lord set his church up in this way. The mission is in the driver's seat, and the mission will do the heavy lifting to help your church turn. We can trust him and his gospel and his mission. It is enough. All these other things that we talk about, these tools and stuff, are helpful. But if you will focus on the mission, and if your church is upside down and you're not seeing much accomplishment of the mission, be sure that every church member knows about every changed life. Just celebrate what God is doing, and that, I think, will take your church a long way. Well, Josh, there has not been as much sarcasm in here as what I'd kind of hoped for.
I'm sorry. I did pray that the Lord would really be honored today, so that's probably why the sarcasm ceased.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little disappointing. I'm not gonna
Maybe
lie.
I'll bring it some other time for you.
Maybe some. Maybe so. Well, thanks for listening to the PAVE podcast today. You can learn more about Texas Baptist by going to txb.org. That's like Texas Baptist, txb.org. And you can find more information about PAVE at txb.org/PAVE. That's where you'll find videos, articles, tips, ideas, schedules of PAVE offerings coming up. That's txb.org/PAVE. Josh, I don't want to thank you for being here, but have a good day.